SPY held its support level in here. Now, the question is, for how long is it going to hold? There's some signs here that it could hold for a little bit. We are looking a little exhausted after this huge move down. We have these two gaps. It's possible to see some kind of lift tomorrow as we go into the consumer confidence number. Subscribe to this channel, click all notifications as we put out a lot of updates and alerts to what is actually going on out there. But you see how you're wedged in here? And you can see that really clean, right? So now we know where we're wedged in, and we have our first green bar, and it's a doji. We like dojis because dojis are a sign of uncertainty. Positioning of the indexes are important to note. We're probably going to have some resistance as we get up here into that 385 range, but you just want to watch and see how you're hanging out here. And you are holding a level for the first time. Now, this does not negate the MACD, which is actually getting worse on the histogram, and we're starting to see the zero line. All it simply means is that we're resting, and it has to make a decision. We're either going to take out this level and roll back down, or we're not. But the bottom line is the selling pressure today couldn't get to us. Now, this is something we went over earlier yesterday. See these arrows denote our line. We've only been here maybe 5 or 6 times. Stocks above the 5-day moving average. Right now, we're at a reading of, it looks like 6. Now, if we're at a reading of 6, and these are the readings that we've had before, it's important to note that you're pretty much tired. Meaning, I'm not saying that you're going to go up because of this, but you're exhausted. So if you're a little tired in here, then you have to take a look at what does that mean. Every single one of these cuts under this 7 line resulted in a test of getting back up to this 90 line. Now, this can happen and stocks can still go sideways, right? Because all we're talking about is the 5-day moving average. But I do think it's important to note that this can happen. The other thing I think is really important about this graph is how we're making these lower highs. So that's not exactly what you want to see. That means that the breath is actually getting worse. Now, despite all the doom and gloom and what we saw happen with Japan and rates today, this is the VIX, and the VIX is imploding. So we have an imploding VIX, and at the same exact time, we have the S&P that is standing stagnant. So what they're doing is basically just selling volatility, and they're selling puts. To me, this is what they're doing against the index. And it's really interesting style to do right now. It's pretty fascinating to watch. I don't know how this plays itself out, but that's a bear flag. And it's pretty unequivocal of what that is. So I'm really curious if they're going to break this down, because if they crack this and we retest down here, this 18, 19, the equities are going to rally. I mean, it's just a matter of time before they do. Now, you're not getting any help at all from the 10-year. You can just see they are just constantly selling bonds. And usually when we are selling bonds, we are seeing equities drop, but that's not the case today. Equities actually went up again, even though they sold a lot. This is the 20-year bond, and you can just see we've just been declining the entire way. People just literally blowing out of the bonds. Nobody wants to own the long end. And look today, look at this gap down. But on that gap down, we still could not get this to crack. Still could not get the S&P to break that 380 level. Tesla, you can see how we filled the gap. Here is our gap level from about 2 years ago. Now, this far out is really when you start running into any kind of support. These are minor support levels that are in here. This 126.37, 117.11. For any kind of what I would refer to as major support, there's nothing now to about that 111 range, which is something that's already been tested. So I would suggest that that has a stronger ability to hold in this level. Now you can also see there's a little spot right in here as well where we rejected before we flipped over. So you have a lot going on in that space. And that's definitely something that I'd be paying attention to if I was in this name. We've been talking about this weekly head and shoulders now for a while. It's got to be over a month. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. And you can see very clean how we broke here. I do think it's pertinent to just mention that there is another level here that just absolutely cracked. And you can see that level in here. We have this little angle, and then you just form a megaphone right on it. And once that megaphone cracked, that was it. The megaphone's right here as you're making these higher highs and lower highs. This gets wider and wider. Obviously, this is your flag, but when you make these megaphones, it usually leads to a very violent move. In this case, that was to the downside. But when you start looking for spots on Tesla where you need to be involved, they're far and few between that start making any kind of sense on where you could see real support, like an actual support level. Now, I don't know why it's incessant right now, but it's absolutely imploding. So there's only a couple of reasons why this could be happening. If Elon is actually selling stock, this could be happening. Now, if he's in a blackout period, it does not matter because the bank that put the loan on is going to have the right to sell stock if certain thresholds happen. In other words, if Twitter does not make the amount of money that he stated it would, they might have the right to reduce his Tesla position. None of us have any idea how this agreement was structured. We're all just speculating. It might not just be him. It could be a percentage of you're over. We want you to be at 52%. We really just don't know. So we're speculating. But what we do know is that is just incessant, the selling. Absolutely incessant. And they did a great job today of getting back over that level, making you think that there was going to be a gap fill. And then it just absolutely broke down again and just rolled. And now we're back at some support levels. But we are seeing some signs of bottoming in certain sectors. Now, whether this holds or doesn't hold remains to be seen, but we're seeing signs of it. So here we are with the 200-day moving average, and this is XLE. You can see the breakdown here. 1, 2, 3 breaks down. This is your breakdown bar, and then you reverse. Try to revert, and you try to get back over the top of this flag, and what happens? Rejection. So you're not going to know until you get up and over. I will say that the fact that you now have a higher high and you have follow through tomorrow if you make another higher high, right? Which is really what you were attempting to do here. This is setting you up a little bit. And at the same time, we are sitting right at the 5 and the 10 SMA. So that's another important level. MSOS is an ETF that focuses on the pot space. Now we can see the rejection up here when it broke the 200. Once we broke the 200, that was it. You just reversed and sold down. But I think there's something more going on here. MSOX happens to be a ETF that is 2x that ETF. I'm wondering if they're over levered and that's creating a lot of pressure. And I've seen this happen before. And the pressure of this is actually accentuating the ETF. And it's spilling over into everything. I think it's really important to note that this pressure that you're seeing on these names, that might just be pressure because of something that's misaligned with this ETF. So do I think you shorted here? No, I think you had your shot, obviously, to short this. And it was a beautiful trade. But now you just want to watch and see how it plays out. I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of news here where they're having some kind of liquidity. We had a pattern. All of these names that broke down, all these leading names that we were just waiting for them to roll and crack, they all didn't have follow through. They all stopped. This is one day and there is nothing redeeming about this chart when I'm showing. I just want to show you a pattern. See how Apple stopped? Nvidia stopped. Now we have a Doji. Netflix reversed. 1, 2, 3 breakdown, reversed off the low and rallied. Microsoft with an undercut and then up probably over 50% on the existing bar. If we zoom in on those two bars, you can see the undercut right here. If we put fib levels on this bar, we can note percentage levels. And what we're seeing is we are above the 50% line. We actually got above the 61.8. So that refers to a piercing pattern. Now, piercing patterns usually mean reversals are possible. Now, you are seeing some stabilization in here in names like BA, Boeing. This was one that we are all waiting for the industrials to crack with the rest of the group, but they just are not cracking. And we're seeing money actually flow into them. Caterpillar. You see these levels? We're not breaking down. If we look at the Dow, we have 3 days where we're not really taking out a lower low. You kind of took one out here, but not really. You kind of bounced right back in and your body stayed in there. Now, I mentioned this in previous videos. When you have a death cross where the 50, in this case, the 55 is crossing the 200 and the 50 or 55 is crossing above, That's called a golden cross. But what happens once you have a cross is the 200-day becomes your resistance. And you can see that this is pretty textbook. It could actually be in a textbook. It's so perfect. Now, you have a golden cross. That should actually hold. Being super technical, this should actually hold. Now, if this holds, industrials will probably go higher. And I want to stress this again. I'm not seeing any significant developments in the SPY, but you are seeing some of these levels show you that you're grossly overdone, and you are seeing signs like this that you really should be paying attention to. Don't just assume that we're going to roll back and take out the lows. Let the market tell you what it's going to do. Please comment on this video. I wanted to give more of a macro view. Our trading room, Alpha Chasers, is on waitlist currently. There is a link up here in the top right. Simply click the link and you will be added to the waitlist. Everybody have a great evening.